I'm Anil Dash. We're going to talk about defending the internet, and we're going to jump right into it. We've got an amazing lineup of people here. These are people that are fighting for you every day. You should be fighting alongside them. We've got Tiff, Cheng, listen to start, Alexis, Ohanian, Slater. I'm going to start, we're not doing intros. We're going to get right into the heart of this. Talk about defending the internet. What the hell do we mean defending the internet? What are we defending it from? Eric, you're on first.
I'm on first.
That's right.
A lot of pressure. So I'll start with a question. When the government is making policies that affect the internet and internet users, do you feel like you are represented today in current political processes?
No. Is anybody's answer yes?
No.
Listen, who wins? So if you answered no, or even if you answered yes, my second question is how can I help you? Because I think that's what we're using. We can talk a lot about individual policy issues or bills and particular sorts of threats and what we mean by even the open internet. But I think the most important thing that I've learned from the last year is that we need to fix the process of how internet policy is made, how internet governance happens. We need internet policy to be like the internet, not like politics as usual. And I think that's a real opportunity we saw over the last year. I think that's my short answer to the question.
This is the only question I'm going to do this for. I'm going to go through all four of you and ask you for. So I want this one.
I just want up and down vote arrows on everything in Washington. I think everyone here in this room realizes the full potential of the internet, whether that is to share a great cat photo or whether that is to get a bunch of people together to make something happen in a place where people didn't think change could happen in Washington. And it is no longer, and this was a very great meme from the movement, it is no longer okay to not understand how the internet works. And we need to do everything in our power to make sure our elected officials either know how the internet works or that they're actually listening to people who know.
So ROFLCon. Alright, so I have a little bit of a different answer as to who we're defending the internet against. And that's called the quote-unquote content industry, RIA, MPA, mafia, as it were. And they don't really like the internet. Yeah, and why is this? Well, we've seen for over a century, every time technology comes along that threatens a business model of these industries, for example, the player piano, the radio, the VCR, cable TV, the MP3 player, they try to shut it down. And the internet is the next one of these. They want to preserve outmoded business models and they don't want to innovate. And they want to do this at the expense of an open internet. Every hour that you spend on 4chan, Reddit, or any other of the sites, you're not spending it watching, say, a TV show or a movie. Now you may be pirating it, but that's not what we're talking about here on this panel. So they are the ones who are going in back rooms, they're going to Congress, they are lobbying, they're going at the international level. They are doing everything they can. Last year alone, they spent $94 million to lobby. The technology industry, quote unquote, only spent 14, and that doesn't even represent the internet community. So we actually have a pretty big opponent that we're fighting against, and we need to get all of you guys involved. That's who we're fighting against.
Hello. I think it's pretty obvious to everybody, though I don't think until the SOPA fight, we've all collectively said together we believe in the transformative power of the internet over our lives. I think the internet adds this extra layer that allows us to access our basic rights in a way that we sometimes, for a big part of our history, don't have as equitably and as maximally as we do now. I think we should work to expand and protect that power and activate each other and the internet in general to protect the public good that the internet gives us. Every time the internet is used for someone to express their views or for there to be an extra layer of public scrutiny, every time someone uses the internet to take down bad practices or disrupt old industries, that's what I think we fight for. It hasn't been well defined yet, but I think that's our job going forward, and I think we could do that. I think it's becoming very, very clear to us.
So we're talking a lot about policies and regulation and laws, and these are the things that are controlling what we're doing. But isn't part of the problem here technical? Are the things we need to be defending technologically about what you can do with IP, meaning Internet Protocol, not intellectual property? Are there other aspects of this that have to do with the bits and bytes? Or is this all just law and policy stuff for lawyers? I mean, we don't have any recourse about Facebook's terms of service, do we? Right? If I disagree with what their terms of service are, I can't petition Mark Zuckerberg to change it. I can't even do that on Reddit. Right?
Technically, Facebook does have a policy that if 35% of Facebook users all agree on a certain policy, which by the way would be more than the entire population of the United States, they can bring it to Facebook. But yeah,
and then you can bring it to Facebook, and then what?
And then in theory, there's some process, but it's all bullshit.
So, Neil, I think what you're talking about is the value we care about is not the internet per se, but freedom. Right? You care about freedom. You don't really care who's restricting your freedom. You want freedom. And when it comes to sort of conversations we have online, like the Reddit thread or a chat room, you could choose to leave that conversation if you don't like it. You can choose whether or not you want to use a service. You're using certain services, using Google services, you can take your data with you. You can export it, you can leave, you can ban it.
Yeah, but that's if you don't like America, then you should leave, isn't it?
So you're anticipating the point I'm about to make, which is that when it comes to governance, we're in a trickier spot, right? When it comes to internet policy, we can't simply say, I'm packing up my toys and going home. We can't simply say, we actually need to engage with other people, have empathy for where they're coming from, and try and figure out a way forward, right? We can't simply say, I have the freedom to leave and I'm done. We have to do something a little bit different if we want to preserve that freedom.
Yeah, so you're at Google, and you're working with the Global Public Policy Group, trying to fight for an open internet, and you're also part of the same company that's doing Google Plus and getting a lot of blowback about how the community negotiates its rights on that platform. How do you balance those two things?
So there are two answers to that. One is I can give you the on-the-record answer that I'm clear to give you as a person from Google. But the answer from me as Derek is, why do you care what I think? I want to hear what you think. What matters is what you think and making your voice heard. Right? Like you guys, the great thing about the internet is you have a platform where your voice can be heard. So it's not about getting Google to say or do something. It's about all of you taking action. And I think that's what you're pointing out then when it comes to particular services is how do we have a conversation about the relationship between a user and a company, the user and a citizen and their government in a way that's functional? What does that conversation look like? What's that process look like? So that those decisions can be made fairly with some process and so on. That's really hard. Right? That's a governance issue. I don't know how to solve it, but I'm interested in hearing other solutions.
So if we can't rule ourselves, who are we to say we should be ruling other people and making policy? Right? We can't even impact the communities we do control. Alexis, you co-founder of Reddit, and you don't control that community, even with that status. Right? They've done stuff you disagree with or that you would object to, and you can't make them do something in your regard. And that's with privileged status within the community. If we didn't have that much recourse in our own communities, why are we standing up in front of people saying we should be making policy about this?
Because we would be making policy based on an aggregate idea. I think the best lessons that we've taken from growing Reddit have been lessons that have been from the community and that have been lessons or decisions made in the best interests of the community. And I guess one of the things that has given me some hope in some of these discussions, even when it's been about depressing things like how quickly CISPA went through the House, is that ostensibly every American cares about rights to privacy. Every American cares about rights to free speech. That is part of being American. And yet for some reason, well illustrated by this Act Cleaner comic, I might add, as soon as we start talking about this online, it starts being a whole other world. And that is part of the storytelling, that is part of the education that I think we really need to do.
Elizabeth, would you say some of the reason that the change in that perception because it's online is due to concerted efforts from the media interests you talk about? Are they poisoning the well? Are they saying the web is a bad place to have free speech?
The media generally?
Well, the media interests.
Well, yeah, so I think what we saw in the Soma fight was actually until things really got to the very end, the media was not even covering it. And you wonder why. Well, it turns out that the people that own the major media organizations happen to also be the ones that were lobbying for the bill, right? So this is a fundamental problem within the media and within our society. If people here are familiar with Larry Lessig's work, he's gone from internet rights to now fighting corruption in Congress. But more generally, when it came to SOPA, I wanted to just tell you guys about how, first of all, how many people here contacted Congress or did something?
Wow, that's awesome.
SOPA became a meme, and it propagated throughout the internet, and people created things like, I don't know, the SOPA toilet paper. Did anyone see that? SOPA. Yeah, it was on Kickstarter. It didn't actually get funded. Thank you. The SOPA glasses, the T-shirt that some people are wearing today. I blanked SOPA, and all I got was this blank T-shirt. And people took it and they ran with it, right? And this is the first time that we saw this kind of engagement on a massive scale. And the meme aspect of it was one of the major parts. It took on a life of its own. It was chaotic, it was distributed, it was decentralized. So that's why I think being here at ROFLCon with all of you guys, where you're capable of taking these things to the next level, this is up to you. You guys need to do it.
Let me sharpen that point a little bit, because we talk about it was chaotic, decentralized, but they were instigators. Tiff, you were one of them. I'd love to find out more about how do you go from, oh, here's a bill, we hear about it, we think it's probably not that good, we read through it, we think it's actually terrible, and then you go from that sort of, well, this is my gut feeling, this is bad, into I'm going to do something. What does that look like?
Well, can I just respond to your policy
please.
question before?
Yeah, of course.
Because I think it's not about necessarily making policy. None of us in particular really care about making policy, except maybe Derek. But
I do a little.
okay, or Anil. But I think it's that narrow interests have defined the internet really, really narrowly for Congress. We work to represent and push for the broad possibilities of the internet, and I think that's extremely important. So there's technologists, there are academics, there are lawyers, there are activists, there are policymakers who think an open network at its core creates the public good that leads to people actually having agency and ability in their lives. So if you want to say that's rulemaking to say let's make sure we have an open internet, then I'm fine with that. And so, you know, Reddit works on this principle that is about openness as well, peer contribution. And because it goes out of control or has its own way, doesn't mean that there aren't specific features in it that make Reddit open and more participatory and more wild and interesting.
Right, but Reddit
and that's wild and interesting and participatory culture making is sort of where we all want to go. We think it makes our lives better.
Right, but Reddit is also skews very heavily male, often we can be pretty sexist. It's not as inclusive as we'd like to be. Like, there's a lot of flaws, right? So we point to this as, well, government should work more like this. Actually, to my knowledge, our government does work like that. There's a bunch of
well, you can make those similarities for sure. But that doesn't mean there shouldn't be a female Reddit made that has, I don't know what. Sorry, Alexis.
Yeah, those are great things.
Yeah, so there may be ones. But to answer your question about you see a bill, why do you take action? There really did need to be a grassroots voice on SOPA and PIPA. When we saw the language of the bills, it was like, oh yes, there's definitely room to protest this. There's definitely room to create a platform where internet users who know how awesome the internet is can actually stand up. So we decided to help make a platform, get the message out, that would get the message out about internet censorship, and also create the tools that would allow websites, small and large, to reach millions of people. And I think that was the beginning of what we saw, and so much happened following that. And I think there were many innovations starting with you know, some of the tools that allowed websites to contact Congress, that allowed their visitors to contact Congress, that drove the blackout to what happened.